Thank you everybody for coming in today, and thank you for the organizers for letting us be part of this. So as mentioned, my name is Julio Aleman, and this work we work with Dr. Ravi Krishnamurthy and Connor Wigan at the University of Pittsburgh. The rest of the co-authors and scientists, they work on the scientific part or the clinical aspect of our work through the many institutes or laboratories across the University of Pittsburgh. And today we're going to talk about the liver-pancreatic islet axis in MAFLD and type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is a complex disease that is part of the metabolic syndrome, and it involves multiple organs. Among all these things, there's several comorbidities included, as you can list from here. So as we approach how to tackle MAFLD, our group has focused primarily in the use of a liver platform and a pancreatic islet system to achieve this tackle. Why? Because MAFLD, at the end of the day, is a global health problem that affects 25% of the adult population with up to 70% comorbidities with type 2 diabetes. So it's bound to become a really big issue. So we're not going to talk about therapies. Therapies will be addressed by Dr. Taylor on Friday for anybody who wants to talk about it. Our main hypothesis is that addiction of insulin-resistant liver-derived effectors that induce beta cell hyperplasia, then there exists a complementary set of factors from the insulin-resistant liver that can potentiate beta cell dysfunction in the context of hyperglycemia and hyperinsulinemia. So the University of Pittsburgh type 2 diabetes program has three axes of study. First, we're going to start with primary cells in our MPS platforms for liver and pancreatic islets, which we're going to be using as disease modeling and drug discovery. Second and third, we are going to have an iPS-derived pancreatic islet system and a iPS-derived liver sinusoidal system cells that then eventually we're going to fully organize into a fully system coupling. So we can begin first with our human vascularized liver acinus MPS or VLAMs. This VLAMs is composed of two layers of glass, as Hannes and the previous presenter mentioned. Glass is a great surface, a great alternative for PDMS. These two glass caskets support a middle layer also of glass with a PET membrane, and then they sandwich our tissue in the middle. This platform is capable of reproducing the particular parenchymal zonation of the liver, as we can, if you want to address in our publication. Our system is composed of 4 primary cell types from the liver with physiologically relevant proportions. These cells are in the vascular layer. In the bottom, we have our L-sacs and we have our Kupffer cells, and then on the top chamber, we have our hepatocytes and stellate cells in a biomimetic space of these. So overall, the system has a complex tissue interaction plus a 2-chamber system for vascular and hepatic chamber flow. We have managed to progress MAFLD disease through altering the media composition of our VLAMs. So we begin first with a basal normal fasting composition where we are able to maintain a healthy state of our system. Then as we introduce metabolic system insults such as increases in glucose on free fatty acids, we move into what we call as early metabolic disease, followed by later a late metabolic disease stage where we incorporate the same early metabolic system factors plus the addition of inflammatory factors such as lipopolysaccharides and TGF-beta. So far with our disease progression of MAFLD in our VLAMs, we've been able to maintain disease progression during 10 days, where with this disease progression, we were able to achieve primarily fibrosis, hepatic steatosis, and most importantly, hepatic insulin resistance. So 2 key metrics of metabolic syndrome that we can see in our device is first, hepatic ballooning, which here is represented by the abnormal aggregation of cytokeratin 18, which are called as the Mallory bodies, which we can design here. And second, insulin resistance, which we can detect in line through glucose sensors in our device, where after a day of insulin retrieval and then a second insulin introduction, we can measure glucose uptake and see a difference as we disease progress with the medias. Further details about our platform through the use of IPS cells will be discussed by our colleague Somersia in a talk on Friday. Now, when we move forward into our pancreatic system, we have our vascularized pancreatic islet MPS platform, which uses the same glass and the same PET membrane arrangement for our VLAMs, but in this occasion, islets are encapsulated directly into the membrane. These islets are then put into the flow and then are going to be connected. The further details about this aspect are going to be addressed by Connor Wigan in poster 294. Now, let's go at what has happened as the individual primary islets first. So primary islets have been able to retain glucose-stimulated insulin secretion, or GSIS function, and morphology in the V panels for 4 weeks. What this means is that when systems have been tested in a static culture and in the dynamic culture on the V panels, we can see that after 4 weeks, the dynamic system has maintained good C-peptide and glucagon morphology, as the static culture has lost part of their signal. And more interestingly, we have, in this aspect, when we have glucose stimulation of the same islets at 4 weeks, difference between 1 week and 4 weeks, we have better glucose stimulated secretion when they have been cultured in dynamic system. Now, as part of our efforts in the consortium is trying to implement the IPS systems into organoids in our platform. So what we have generated is stem cells, the IPS cells, that have been using an insulin M-cherry reporter have been aggregated, and after maturation, they have been dissociated, these organoids, and then they have been only selected the M-cherry positive cells or the insulin producing cells. These same cells are then later reaggregated, introduced into the B panels, and then after a week on their flow, we can observe that they have a great light dead or viability, and they have been able to maintain their GSIS functionality on their flow. So now we move forward into coupling these two systems that we have further characterized. And for that, we have done two aspects. First, we want to remove our physical aspects out of the fluidics, and for that, we did what we're calling a functional coupling, where we first optimize condition the media in a VLAMs, then further we characterize it, and as we characterize it, we introduce it into the V panels to see the downstream outcome. And later, we introduce the mechanical aspects of this by introducing flow and connection in between the two systems to see what the interaction is. So, first, we begin with our functional coupling of the VLAMs and the V panels, and with this, we were able to maintain healthy pancreatic islets with the use of normal fasting media. So as I mentioned, we begin by having our V panels with all the cultural and microenvironment aspects, which were later, we cultured the media, we collected it, this was conditioned media, we then introduced and run this through the V panels. So from the V panels, after 8 days of cultures, we have learned some lessons. First of all, is that when media comes from a static system in primary cells into full % conditioned media, the islets don't tend to like it. And so we then trialed different solutions where we came out to 25% as being a really nice sweet spot where we can condition this media. These conditions were also yielding different but really significant GSIS values that were really good for us to translation to the next stage. So from this lesson learned, we found a new lesson as we move into the next stage of our system. We move into the physical coupling of the V panels and VLANs where we achieve a the 8 days functionality with a difference between normal fasting media and our early metabolic syndrome. What we first learned is that by reintroducing the physical flow, it was actually beneficial with the outcome as we didn't have to address the dilutions in our system. So our physical coupled system, we first are going to address what happened to the VLAMs. So what we came out of the VLAMs is the albumin readout that came through the system actually concurs with what we have seen and what we have recorded in the database, in the MPS database, where we can see that an increase of albumin goes hand in hand with an increase of glucose and free fatty acids, while it maintains a more discrete values when it doesn't have this increased albumin, glucose, and free fatty acids. Now, on the tissue itself, when we report lipid tox as a red marker in these images of lipid accumulation, we see low signal, but we also see a high signal of insulin receptor substrate 2 as an indicator of healthy and presence of insulin receptor, so that meaning these cells are glucose sensitive. Now, the systems that run through EMS media, we can see an increase of the lipid tox red signal in their platform, and we see a decrease of insulin receptor substrate signal in it. So then as we move downstream into the system, we're going to analyze the VPANs, where in the use of normal fasting media during this coupling system, again without dilution, we have observe a good C-peptide signal and a good glucose signal in the islets. And most importantly, we also observe a good insulin stimulation index from glucose stimulation in this platform. So as we move forward into more and more of these experiments, we aim to be able to observe what's going to happen when we have the insults of an insulin-resistant liver, and how these are going to impact both the hyperplasia on the islets, but also we want to see any other insults that might be targeted for impacting hyperglycemia and hyperinsulinemia into the disease progression on the islets. As a summary, we can address that MAFLD is a complex disease with up to 70% comorbidity and type 2 diabetes, and as such, this axis is of high importance for our disease progression and drug discoveries. We have demonstrated that we are able to progress disease with the use of personalized medias that are chemically defined. Also, we are able to explore that by coupling the system, we probably target time-dependent secretions from the VLAMs or an insulin-resistant liver into a downstream healthy pancreas on a one stream. Most importantly, we are implementing an isogenic IPS cell line as the source of this platform for both our liver and our pancreas systems. So this work wouldn't be able without the collaboration and the leadership from all the teams involved at the University of Pittsburgh and our collaborators and the funding agencies. And for that, thank you very much.